Well, as you know, Hurricane Irma has her crosshairs lined up perfectly and directly on South Florida. And as millions of people try to hit the highways out of town at the same time, panic is setting in. There are people sitting on the side of the road out of gas. And we are starting to learn how powerful weather is. This is a perfect time to talk about the subject, weather. How about if you were living in the Everglades? You were out there in the bush and you did not have TV or internet. Or you were on a ship or a boat with no TV, no internet. Well, we're going to talk about something today that's going to be very interesting. A scientific device that was invented back in 1942. I think you're going to enjoy this story. So come along with us for the ride. Hello there again. Here we are at Hidden Spotlight Treasures, and we have an interesting story for you today. I believe as Hurricane Irma is bearing down on the Caribbean islands and it's plotting its course towards Miami, I believe it's appropriate to tell you a story today that you may not be aware of. Today we're going to talk about the very first weather forecaster out there. This scientific instrument has been in use since 1942. Of course, we're talking about the Sager Weathercaster. This is going to be a very interesting story because before all the computers, this is how they did it. And the beautiful thing is, it's still in use today by sailors and many people. Especially if you do not have a computer, this forecaster is sometimes more accurate than the computers. So let's talk about it today. This is the first one. The guest was the first one, and then it evolved into the Sager Weathercaster. It's a scientific instrument for accurate prediction. Remember, this is the first, which has the cloud cover. Yeah. Remember, folks, this channel normally is devoted to the huge collection, which is one of the biggest west of the Mississippi. And of course, this is part of the collection. We're talking about Raymond Sager's Weathercaster, which has been in use since 1942. Now, the amazing thing about the Sager Weathercaster is it also puts cloud cover into the equation. Now, this is something that the Zambretti forecaster does not use. So, the Sager forecaster is more accurate than the Zambretti forecaster because it includes cloud cover, which the Zambretti does not. Very, very accurate scientific device, as I said before, in use since 1942. You may not believe this, but the inventor of the Sager Weathercaster was Raymond, and we have his son, Brian, here with us today. He is actually the cameraman. Say hello, Brian.
Hello.
Yes, we have Brian Sager, the son of Raymond here. They're from New York, and that's why we have all this original memorabilia. Many people have not even seen this stuff before. For example, this was the first Weathercaster. It's called the Guest Weathercaster. It evolved into the Sager Weathercaster. We'll go into that more later. If you went into the stores to buy it, you would have this on the counter of the stores telling you all about the Sager Weathercaster, $5.95, and later on, I believe the price went up to $8.95. The amazing thing, it's still in use today. Since 1942, it's so accurate and it's so dependable that sailors and people around the world are still using it today. It is literally amazing. So here is Raymond Sager right here explaining to the children the weather map and everything. Now the amazing part is that after Raymond was in the war, World War II, where he was, Brian, was he in the weather department?
He was in the weather department stationed in Brazil.
Was that part of like the meteorology group?
Yes.
So yes, so Brian's father, Raymond, was in World War II. He was actually part of the weather team with the Army, right?
Yes.
And when did he start working for the Daily News, Brian?
I believe it was in the 40s.
Yeah, right after the war. Okay, so apparently he worked at the Daily News for almost 30 years, right, Brian?
Yes.
Yeah, from the late 40s up until the late 70s when he retired to Florida. So again, the inventor of the Sager Weathercaster worked at the Daily News, and he was part of the weather department. Is that correct?
Yes.
He was very proud of his work and his invention because it is quite accurate, quite dependable, and he's no longer with us, but he would be really, really amazed that sailors and people throughout the world are still using his scientific device. So Brian, is it not true that in World War II, the generals actually had to collaborate with your father to get approval to fly some of the bombing raids because of weather conditions, and they had to clear it with your father in World War II. Is that true?
Absolutely.
Yes, that's an interesting bit of information when it comes to weather was so important in war. People don't realize how important weather is, because if they send the bombing raid out and the weather conditions are not perfect, we could have lost lives of American soldiers. So it's very, very interesting that the generals had to ask the weather department to get approval to fly some of these bombing raids, and of course Raymond Sager was involved with that. Now, the Sager Weathercaster is a handheld system of dials used to accurately predict upcoming weather. The work devising the tool started in the 1940s, and the last revision to the system was made in 1962. Raymond Sager was a meteorologist in the Army during World War II. He was stationed in South America, and after the war, he was a meteorologist with the New York Daily Times. He spent his entire life working in meteorology. When he wasn't working on weather, he was working on the Weathercaster. This was his life's work here. He put his life's work into this, and it really is an amazing scientific device still being in use today. Now, there are thousands of variations in this small device which predicts weather 12 to 24 hours in advance. So what we're looking at here is a scientific device that predicts weather 12 to 24 hours in advance. It was very popular with sailboats, motorboats, and in fact it was recommended by the Yachting Magazine and Sports Illustrated. It's now out of print. Very, very hard to find scientific device. Now, Brian, of course, this one, when your dad was first working on it, you say this guest one was like a prototype? Would you consider it, was this being sold or was it a prototype?
Yeah, it was being sold, but it was revised.
Okay, so this is actually the first one that was sold in 1942 in the 40s, but it was revised. Okay, and of course it was turned into, after revised, it was called the Sager Weathercaster. Tell us, can you go to the dial, Brian, and tell us a little bit about how you use this thing?
No, I can't.
Well, nothing like a little New York humor. Let's carry on. Actually, how does it work, Brian? What do you do with the dial there? The amazing one about this, I hear, is different than the Zambretti, is you have a spot for the cloud cover. Is this cloud conditions?
Yes.
The cloud conditions, huh? And even the original one, it says here.
You need a barometer. That's what you need.
Also, you need a barometer to use this, right, Brian?
Yes, and a wind dial.
And a wind dial. So you need a barometer, a wind dial, and of course you also have a spot there for the cloud. And then, which one of these is for the barometer? Which one of the dials is for the barometer?
It would be the second dial.
The second dial. And you say there's one for wind conditions too?
Yes. Steady veering.
Okay.
Back steering.
And
northwest, west, southwest.
And when
south.
all these are in alignment, when you make all your barometer readings and your wind readings and and these all get into some sort of alignment, right?
Exactly.
And that's how this scientific device works, which amazingly is, I hear, about 80% accuracy in predicting weather.
Yes, it is.
Now, Brian, I'm guessing that he got the inspiration to make this Weathercaster when he was in the military during World War II. I mean, I'm just guessing, but you're telling me right before he died, he was working on a tide forecaster
Exactly.
for the ocean tides, huh?
Right.
And so that's what he was working on right before he died.
Right.
Of course, that one was never made, was never brought to market.
Right.
Okay, so the weather forecaster, an unbelievable instrument, and I believe this ties in to Hurricane Irma. We got Hurricane Irma coming. So this is a good time for me to bring it up again. Not everybody lives in the city. Amazingly, there are actually people who live out in the Everglades, not far from the Indian reservations. You have Indian reservations, the Miccosukee Indian reservations, the Seminoles, and they live out there in the Everglades. Now, I know they have power and internet on the Indian reservations, but some of the people who live off-grid, these are the people who moved away from Miami. They wanted to get away from the Miami scene, all the hustle and the bustle of Miami. They moved out there to the Everglades. Some of these people living off the grid do not have TV, internet. That's why a tool like this, a scientific tool like this, is so important, because, they don't have satellite images, which I'm showing you now in 3D. You're looking at the 3D satellite image of Irma. They don't have all this technology at their fingertips. So when you're on that boat, some people go for extended stays out on the ocean with their yacht, their boat, or whatever. They're out of TV, satellite range. You can now see how important a scientific tool like this could be. I cannot stress this enough. But thank you for joining us, and one final thought on the subject. Now, I must add that there are 2 websites on the internet, at least 2, that have taken the Sager Weathercaster and they have put it into a computer program, a computer algorithm. And it's now in a computer form, and they do give credit to Raymond Sager. So that is a good piece of information. I should add that now this scientific device is now available on the computer as a computer algorithm, and it's based strictly on this scientific device, and they do give credit to Raymond Sager. So again, thank you for joining us here at Hidden Spotlight Treasures, and I must give many thanks and kudos out there to Brian and Marilyn Sager from Las Vegas, Nevada, who were nice enough to share this amazing story with us.